that Avanza media platform. Thank you. So as stipulated, I'm going to be talking about the impact that COVID-19 has had Prince on Nkatsudojo Propeller, which is a non-profit organization founded by myself and Thandeka Mhlanga. Myself, I am a molecular biologist, as indicated in the profile, and Thandeka is a physicist, and we're both master's graduates and have dabbled in a bit of business and entrepreneurship-based courses. So the challenge that we had, Thandeka and myself, with being researchers or young academics, as it were, is that the research findings after your master's degree or your PhD degree ends up in some conference, which is nice. It's fun. You travel and you get to speak about your findings. They go into publications, which are read by a very niche population of people. If you're lucky, you'll get a patent or a patent disclosure. But seldom do these solutions to these research findings land themselves in the commercial space, but they're so viable. They're viable innovations, they're viable technologies. But in Africa, holistically, we just don't have the culture to translate research findings into the commercial space. And the nonprofit organization, Nkatsudojo Propeller, that we started and established in 2017, wants to attack that problem. It wants to build a cohort of young people that have the mindset to identify problems, develop solutions, and then attempt to commercialize. And that's really the basis of the organization. And we identified high schools as the place where we would run this program, because we felt that they were still malleable at that stage, but they also had the capacity to understand research methodology and systems that we would otherwise teach them, so that they're able to identify and solve problems in their communities. And the problem statement reads, the youth must be equipped with the skills that will enable them to cope with the demands of the technological advances brought about by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In addition, the youth must be prepared for the requirements of the workforce of the near future as a result of this incoming technological era. And the schooling system, especially in schools situated in township and rural settings, has not equipped pupils enough. And I think a lot of us can identify with the kind of sort of resources that we had and the kind of education system that we were a part of. And to think that the education system that you and I had is the same education system that your 10-year-old child has and your 15-year-old child has. So the objectives then of Nkatsudojo Propeller are firstly to spark an interest in STEM careers, as well as innovation and entrepreneurship principles. The second is that we want to teach these learners research methodology skills so that they're able to find viable and understand the problems that they identify in their communities and their permutations, and then work towards developing a research project. And third, the objective is to facilitate learners to translate these research findings that they come up with into business cases that are otherwise commercializable. We have in the program about 4 flagship programs, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'm only going to speak to 2. And this is just to give the background so that you understand when I talk about the feedback or the response to COVID-19. So we've got this, I'm going to speak about the 8-year process, and then I'm also going to speak about the innovation clubs that we have in our schools. And just for clarity, we are in 34 schools. We are in South Africa in 7 provinces. And the program runs in this fashion. This is the 8-year process. We activate where we recruit learners into the program. We register them, and then they come for a day's workshop. And then in the workshop, they get taught research methods, after which they then have to go out and conduct research. And we consult, and we have research days. Consultations and research days are run by mentors and consultants that are already seasoned scientists and engineers, so that these kids can begin to start getting that mentorship feel. So it's very face-to-face, as you can imagine. The workshops, very face-to-face, as you can imagine. Activation, very face-to-face. And then we have expos where these kids then showcase their research. We mentor them, we mentor the winners that come out of the school level expos so that they increase the quality of their projects for the Final Innovation Expo, where all of the kids then from the various schools that have won would then participate, and we select a winner in 2 categories. We want kids that produce beautiful research projects. You can see that there's a clear background, and this is also very much face-to-face. And then after that, we also want to select kids whose technology-based solutions show potential for commercialization. Then we select 30 kids who then go through, 30 kids in 10 projects, who then go through to what we call the Technopreneurship Bootcamp. And these kids are then equipped with laptops so that they're able to run businesses. If we're saying that our kids and the youth must run businesses, we must equip them adequately with the resources they require. At this stage, pretty much all of this is face-to-face. And just to illustrate the impact of the program so far, and just to give you a feel of the numbers that we're working with when we speak about face-to-face interaction, is in 2019 and 2020 in the different stages of the program, you can see that activations, we reached 24,276 kids, and this was in 19 schools. And in 2020, this year, we reached 33,580. And then we register, and we registered 5,721 from the pool that we activated in. And we could only run workshops in 7 schools, and already we had reached 1,063 learners. If we look at 2019, for example, you can see that the number of registered kids versus the number of kids that attend is lower. So we anticipated that this year as well would have a much higher number of kids participating in these workshops, which would have meant that we have a higher capacity. We need a higher capacity then for consultations and everything else subsequently. And you'll remember that our program is a funnel system that starts off very much about numbers and goes into the quality of the program and the kind of resources that we are upskilling these kids with. Then what we also have as the second program and last program I'm going to talk about is the innovation clubs. And here, the 8-year process is very much a self-driven process. The child has to enter. There's no criteria that excludes a child based on gender, based on age. It's just grade 8 to grade 11 that can participate in the program. But in the innovation clubs, we go up to grade 12. And the innovation clubs really are for continuity. These kids meet, they form clubs of 20 in their schools, and very face-to-face. And then we interact with them and we teach them creative writing and we teach them programming and coding. And the reason why we introduced coding is because the technology-based solutions that we're coming up with were already very much artificial intelligence, very much data, big data systems, very much holographic technologies. So all these are the kind of things that these kids don't have in the education system. It's the kind of things that they understand. And for us, that was saying that the African youth is hungry for this and they are ready for this, and they can actually conceptualize how these technologies fit into the kind of challenges that they have on a daily basis. And then as we were busy with our workshops and we had hit our 1,060 whatever number in our 7 schools, COVID hit. And this is then how we responded. We had to shut down operations because as stipulated, most of them, all of them basically, are face-to-face. So we had to shut down operation immediately, which meant that we had to communicate adequately to all the stakeholders. But before we even get there, we have a very young team. I'm the eldest in the organization. I'm 32, the youngest person in the organization. I think 22 going on 23. So we've got like about a 10-year gap in the eldest and the youngest person. So we're a youth-led, youth-run organization. So, and because we are young leaders, we understand the anxieties. We understand the character of a young person. So we need to stabilize the team. And what we need to do is make sure that while they're away, working from home, we keep them engaged. So we need to make sure that we've set them up. So they need to have the data. They need to have the laptops that are otherwise bound to the office. Now they have to take them at home so they can work. And then you sort of also have to think about what it is they're going to be doing while programs are not running. And everybody that's on this platform knows that as nonprofit organizations, we generate so much data, but we seldom translate that data to information that can be sold and can start influencing policy. So then we just grounded our team and we said to them, let's capture all of the data that we've got and let's package it in a way that's going to allow us to inform policy where education, innovation, entrepreneurship is concerned. But then we wanted to communicate with our stakeholders. For example, what's in the background is the image of the COVID response that we had, that we shared on social media. But of course, we then had a more formal one for our donors and our stakeholders that indicated to them exactly what it is we were going to do and where we were. And we were honest as much as we could be to say that we do have to digitize. We don't know how we're going to do it. We don't know where we're going to start, but we know that we have to do it. And after you've done that, then if you're Thandeka and myself, you panic because you think about the mammoth task of digitizing, particularly for the marginalized community that we deal with. Fortunately, 2 years ago, I don't know because we wanted to have our kids in one place, we put together a platform, what we called Venkatuto EduPropeller intranet. But we didn't find use for it 2 years ago, so we shut it down and we didn't upgrade we didn't pay for the hosting for the subsequent year, because we have to have like our own sort of domain for this. We can't share it with anyone else. But the essence of the intranet is that it's the one-stop shop where kids are able to do their projects, where kids are able to interact with each other, where they're able to do a project and then put in an email address of a mentor, and then the mentor can read it. And we even went as far as putting in some kind of a streaming service that allows face-to-face interaction, but on the platform itself. And when this happened, we sort of said, okay, let's yank it out and see if it's still viable, and let's put it back up and make sure that it still speaks to the program. So what we're currently doing now is just making sure that this intranet is ready and capable of what the program looks like today versus what the program looked like years ago when we established it. But the implications of this, so also what we did, I think, is that we had decided that we wanted to scale because scale is very important. And part of scaling, we had said that the 10 schools that had been to workshops more than twice were no longer going to attend face-to-face, and we're going to shoot and do a video recording of the workshop. And fortunately, when COVID hit, we had already done that recording. So now we're able to distribute that via WhatsApp. We're able to distribute that via various platforms for our kids to engage with it. But ultimately, it should be situated in this platform, but the program must go on. But also then you think about the cost of downloading a video on WhatsApp. Then you have to start thinking about packaging that material in an audio format. But then you also think about how some of the kids participate in the innovation expos without ever having had attended the workshop, because we also have a written workbook that accompanies the workshops. So using these three media, we believe that we can and are continuing right now with workshops using those media while we wait for the readiness of our platform. Now, the implications of going digital is that your team is likely to be lean. You have to, because there are certain things that you're not doing anymore. Your business model's changing, operations model's changing, so there are certain things that you're not going to need. Fortunately for us, we've got quite a diverse team, and because we work with technology and because we work with innovation and solutions and innovative-based solutions, our team, the way that skill sets that we have is perfectly situated even for the digital platform. But for anyone else that's thinking of going digital, think about how it impacts the jobs in your organization. And then you have challenges, of course, devices. You've got challenges such as data. And while these seem like tangible things, you can buy a device, all things being equal, you can buy data, all things being equal. But when we tested this and when we did some research on this with our population, we started to understand that there are so many social issues around the use of devices for kids. It's true that every household, well, majority of households have a single smartphone, but it doesn't mean that as a mother, I'm going to allow my child to be on my cell phone for 2 hours doing whatever it is they're doing while my life goes on and messages are popping up and they can see what's going on in my life. I'm not for that as a parent. But also you find that you buy a child a device like we did, Courtney from Ivory Park, and the father finds that the father is then intimidated by you taking care of some of the resources that he thinks he should be taking care of. And in the African context, we need to think about the social impact of digitizing as well. But it allows scale and it allows additional revenues such as advertising platforms and so on. So we experimented with this, and we wanted to see what would happen if we actually did a call and we asked our kids to participate in something, and we got over 100 videos where our kids were participating in a COVID-19 campaign, which showed us that our kids are ready for it, and they were using their own data and their own devices or their parents' devices. So we know that they will respond, because that's another issue. You can put all the resources you want, but you don't know if the kid's going to respond. And these are all our partners that make it possible for us to do the work that we do. And as I wrap up, I just want to say that the technology-based solutions that these kids come up with are very viable. And as a result, we've even gone to the extent of registering a for-profit company whose task is to commercialize and distribute and prototype these technologies that our kids come up with. And we have a beautiful, diverse team, very multidisciplinary team, representative of majority of the tribes in the country. Our board goes to the extent of having people from outside the country, because we believe that diversity is key. And as youth-led organizations, we need to act the part. We need to lead young people the way that we want to be led, to ensure that they too, as we lead them, when we pass on the baton, are able to pass it on. And with that, a big EduPropeller gratitude for this platform. Thank you.
Wow, so I mean, that was quite a detailed presentation. Thank you so much, Thulile, for sharing your story, and also for sharing the wonderful things that you are doing to help young people, especially to adjust during this COVID-19 period. Nobody knows what the future is going to be like. And I mean, first of all, I actually wanted to ask you how you are personally coping with activities, maybe whether how your operations have changed. I mean, in your organization, I think you addressed that, how you're teaching your students through video and audio. But how has COVID affected your personal life that you think young people can actually learn something from?
For me, I think it's just given me the opportunity to really reflect around the availability of resources that I have at my disposal and how I use those resources. And I'm also a PhD candidate, so it's literally put a stop to my experiments. So that is frustrating right now. So from that perspective, I think the PhD has slowed down, but has allowed me to do some incredible personal growth and some thinking, and also just to take better care of myself, to gym and sleep, and and really just work on relationships as well, because it's a beautiful time to work on relationships because everyone is home. You can video call someone, catch up on people. So I think that's really how it's affected my life.
Okay, so that's quite amazing. Thank you so much for doing it. But I just want to know if whether you have any final words for young people about how to manage this whole situation before we go for our next presentation.
I think we should act. I think the situation is here, and the effects of it are going to last beyond this period, or the lockdowns that are taking place in our respective countries. But I think as young people, we just need to act. We need to act, we need to do, we need to lead. And all of the things that we ask for in the older generation, the gaps and the space and whatnot that we keep on asking them, I think we need to occupy it and create brands and systems of our own during this time to ensure that we are leading, and leading well and with credibility.
Okay, thank you very much, Thulile. So we are moving straight to the panel discussion, and we'll be talking to powerful women, young women who are doing a lot for themselves and also for the country, and I can say for the continent. I think I can actually recognize Farai Mubewa because I think she's also featured on one of our rankings. And so, a bit of introduction from myself. My name is Prince Akpah, and I'm the managing director of Avia, and it's a PR and a rating company based here in Ghana. If you see a guy behind me, is because I'm actually double taxing. I'm actually currently on TV on one of our local channels, as well as doing this, discussion as well. So it's trying to help me capture the behind the scenes of me doing two activities of watching television of myself and then moderating a session at the same time. So right away into introducing our panelists. I can see we have about 67 participants live here on Zoom, and we have others also following us on Facebook and other media platforms. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. The first person is Omolara Akintoye-Asuni. She is the research advisor for the South African Human Rights Commission representative. And she is a registered barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And she holds a master's in international law from the University of Johannesburg. She's currently working as a research advisor to the South African Human Rights Commissioner, charged with promoting and protecting children and migrants' rights in South Africa. Omolara is a human rights lawyer with demonstrable knowledge of international and regional instruments on human rights. She has vast experience working on issues relating to fundamental human rights, the role it plays in democracy, and the development of the society. She believes that to address insurmountable social ills like poverty, environment, degradation, hunger, and inequality, it is important that investment is made to ensure the growth of social entrepreneurs who are socially conscious of people, profit, and planet. And to introduce Zoleka Monta, she is commonly known as Zoe Monta. She's a youth advocate, a creative storyteller, and the president of Girl Up Johannesburg. She uses her creative skills to communicate and tackle issues affecting the world in order to influence positive change. As a young leader, she's the founder of Bring a Girl Child to University, an initiative that aims to socially educate young girls on the pros and cons of university, dismantling GBV, that is gender-based violence in both HIE and high schools, and whilst empowering the girl child to take up space. Zoe has used her platform in the most incredible ways. To name a few, she has been part of the elections campaign in the year 2019, where she represented the youth on YOTV's Youth Election Forum, ENCA What Young Voters Want, and Levis voting campaign. More of her work includes being a story contributor to the Youth Advocacy Guide by UNICEF Africa and Youth Aside, being the UN agencies, and most recent is the UNICEF Youth COVID-19 Digital Meetup with SA and Italy, with representing the African youth. We have Maletšabisa Molapo. She is a research scientist and research manager at IBM Research South Africa. Her research interests lie at the intersection of human-computer interaction and artificial intelligence. She designs, builds, and deploys and evaluates AI solutions for rural and low-income urban areas in Africa with applications in education and healthcare. She completed a PhD in computer science at the University of Cape Town, based at the Center in ICT for Development. She holds an MSc in Computer Science from the UCT and BNG in Computer Systems and Networks from the National University of Lesotho. Among others, she has been a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, a Google Anita Borg Memorial Scholar, a Canon Collins Scholar. A lot that she has in her profile. I also have Farai Mubaiwa, and she is a partner management lead at the Youth Employment Service. And yes, it's a business-led NPO works in partnership with government and labor to initiate policy changes which incentives the creation of jobs for youth. proud to, yes, Farah served as a project manager at the Orom Institute, a leading African TB and HIV research and implementation institute. Her main project, Youth Health Africa, focus on decreasing the spread of HIV and reducing the high levels of youth unemployment by equipping 10,000 youths from heavily burdened communities with knowledge and education about HIV and AIDS, and providing skills and development and employment to ensure that disenfranchised youth contribute to South Africa's healthcare. She is a non-executive director at Youth Health Africa, and prior to Orom, she was an intern at the South African Institute of International Affairs, and she achieved a distinction for her MSc in Political Economy of Emerging Markets at the King's College London. I think going on and on, she's a Queen's Young Leader for South Africa, a TEDx speaker, a One Young World ambassador, a King's Principal's Global Leadership recipient, and in 2018, she was named one of the top 100 Mandelas of the Future by Media 24. She is a Dalai Lama 2019 fellow, and this year, that was last year, she was named among the 100 top young South Africans, at least by my organization, Advanced Media. So ladies, welcome to this session. It's so exciting to have you share about the impact of COVID-19 on the livelihood of youth. But before I continue to ask my questions, I want to find out how was it easy for you to adapt to this current situation? How easy was it? I was like, Lara, I'm asking how the situation that is currently happening.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't
Can
hear
you hear
you.
me?
I can hear you now. You're breaking up a bit. I think it was a bit different, but because I'm a researcher and it's easy to research if you have the right tools wherever you are, it was not entirely difficult. But it was now having the little kids around, having to be able to teach them how to work online as a young mother, having to be there and also be able to do your work and be productive and to meet all the deadlines that you're required to meet. I think the first 2 weeks was a bit difficult to get that particular work balance, because also then it becomes blurred, because now you have to work throughout the night because there is no, you're working from home, but you are actually at work at every point in time. But I think now it's much easier because with the time and with much more structure, and I believe that people are naturally resilient and we're able to actually cope with whatever situation we find ourselves in. So yeah, I think that's the best way I've coped throughout this period, is to be able to prioritize and to be able to redesign my day and redesign my workload and redesign my priority as a mother and as a wife and as a woman.
Okay, I'd like to hear from you, Farai. How were you able to quickly adapt to, the situations that the pandemic brought to us?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be on this panel. I'm really happy that there's just women here. I think it's amazing and it's a representation of the continent. Africa is female and Africa is young and Black and we're all here. So I think viva for us. And we've all got red lipstick on, which I don't know how that happened, but that's great as well. So in terms of how COVID affected me, so what's happened in my life is that I switched jobs in between, which was really interesting and an interesting dynamic. So in my previous job, which was very focused in terms of HIV and youth unemployment, we were always in the field. So we would often be doing mass HIV testing events where we can in one day test up to 800 people. And obviously the moment the pandemic hit our continent, we had to stop those events completely. And the tricky thing with that is that with your HIV positive patients, they must be on treatment and you must ensure that they're linked to treatment, especially because the virus with their immune systems means that they can be even more vulnerable. So it was quite a difficult shift from being very active to now being based from home, but we were then able to go into the community to go and distribute essential care packages to the vulnerable. In my new job now with the Youth Employment Service, I'm based here at home, which has been really, really good, but obviously very strange to start a new job when you don't meet any of your colleagues face to face, but you just trust that they trust you based on what they see. On a more personal note, I'm not a mom yet, but I have adopted 2 puppies who are driving my partner and I very, very crazy. So that's been really great. So if you do hear barking anytime we're discussing things, just note that it's the puppies. But thanks again for having me.
Oh, hello, Dr. Chabi. I was trying to find out how you were able to adjust to the situation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're on mute. Hi. So yeah, I'm also a researcher, and I think I was already working from home part of the time already before the pandemic hit. So I feel like with my job, I'm pretty used to working from home. But at the same time, I think maybe like for I switched to a new role towards the beginning of the year, and I took on managing like sort of 3 different teams in a research lab, and I only sort of started in the role 2 weeks before we officially started working from home, which was about a week before the South African national lockdown. And that has been interesting, but also I think, which is also an opportunity for everybody. I found that it gave me the space to settle more in the role, and I think is the same for almost everybody, is this the slower pace, not quite, but like the just being away from the rush and the bust of life has allowed me to settle better. And I think that's the main takeaway from this. I also have one little girl who might just walk in here anytime, and it's been interesting, I think, more on the positive side, just to be home more, to be more grounded, etc. So not much negative to say, but I think it's been a grounding experience.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to hear from Zoleka or Zo. Yes.
Hi everyone. My name is Zoleka Monta, and I think I'm the youngest in this panel, but I'm very excited and I'm very inspired by all of the ladies that I'm with here. So when the pandemic hit, for me it was very, very difficult because I'm a student. I'm also running Girl Lab, and we used to being on the ground all the time, and I'm also a freelancer model, so that really, really hit me badly. But when the pandemic hit, I thought to myself, at school, UJ, University of Johannesburg, they're always preaching about 4IR and how it's time for change. I thought to myself, okay, this means that COVID-19 is opening up the door to 4IR and artificial intelligence, and this is how we are going to get into it. And then for me, it was just like, okay, now I think it's time for us young people to start getting used to doing things from home and doing things from our phones and our laptops, and put them to better use to actually create a positive change, and also to make money, because that's very, very important. I mean, so for me, it was like, okay, this is time for us young people to adapt to the changes. Every industrial revolution comes with major changes, and this one is what it is for us. Yeah.
All right. So that was a very good introduction. I learned, few things about how you guys are trying to adapt to a new lifestyle. For me, it was like a major hit, because what happened was, on the day that the first case was announced in Ghana, we were actually preparing to host a concert for students, and we had done our stage setup and everything. And in the evening of, the next day of the event, or day before the event, and the president announced, or the morning of the event actually, the president announced that, because of the situation in the country, we cannot go ahead with our event. So it was a big hit on our business, because we had invested a lot of money into this. But I've been doing a lot of research, thinking through about how other young people are going to cope through this period, especially those who are entrepreneurs, those who are self-employed, because the people that are actually supposed to come and buy their stuffs are no longer interested in, maybe, for example, let's take somebody like a seamstress. Nobody's going for any event any longer, so nobody wants to go and like get a new shirt or buy a new stuff. People who are mechanics. Nobody is driving, I mean, around town again. So there is literally no business of you trying to say that you're opening your shop to repair somebody's like automobile or anything. So it was a big thing. But I was wondering and asking myself, who do we have to blame when it comes to the situation that we find ourselves in? For so far, we are mostly praising our leaders for providing a very good stewardship in terms of steering the affairs of every single activity that's happening, from testing, from treating people with COVID-19. I don't know if whether Africans are actually even trying to do research about how to get a vaccine or a medicine for this kind of virus. But I want to find out from you, from a leadership perspective, how do you think our leaders have handled this so far, and how do you think it's affecting young people? I think I'd like to start with Miss Lara.
Thanks for the question. I feel like most African countries, especially in South Africa, where I am based in, the response has been good to actually address the impact of the measures taken to address the pandemic, which is the social distancing, which has actually affected our global economic, all over the world. The economy is being shut down literally, and well-being and livelihoods have been greatly impacted, especially livelihoods of people that are actually, like you said, young entrepreneurs or self-employed or working in informal sectors. But I think one of the things that the government in South Africa has done, which should be praised, is the fact that they have put in place social relief for small businesses. They've put about 2 billion, they've actually earmarked 2 billion for that particular relief fund. They've also identified the fact that some people are actually vulnerable, and they've made available social relief packages for them and food parcels. They've also hyped the process of the unemployment insurance fund, so that those that are unemployed during this process can also get funding from that. I think one other thing that I'm majorly proud of is the Solidarity Fund, which allows people that are actually still working and that those are still being able to get income to make contributions to address the needs of the vulnerable people. But like you said, I think what we should need to do from this process is also to be able to start thinking forward. Pandemics like this is not the first time this is not the first time a pandemic is happening. So, and as a world, we should be ready for things like this. I think what we should take from this process is, how do we build in resilience in our economy, in businesses and individuals also, so that when such a thing happens in the next century, for example, we are able to actually recover quickly. We're able to also be able to recover and survive and sustain. So I think as much as we're going through this process and trying to sort out this particular problem that we're coming out of now, we also need to start recording things for the future. I think one of the things that we've not been able to do is that we seem to be scrambling right now. If we had probably learned more, if we had probably had an archive of things that we can actually work with, maybe we will not have to scramble that much. So that's when it comes to economic release. But when it comes to keeping distance and all that, I think that has been well documented, and that's what government has been doing. So I think government has been doing well in African states. We just hoping that the process of recovering and of revisiting the whole economy or reviving the whole economy will be better going forward.
Okay, that's good. Farai, would you want to do a contribution?
Yeah, I think that, when we're asked this question in terms of how have African governments handled the situation, I think we need to realize that Africa is not homogenous. So every country has dealt with the situation in their own way. And I'm actually really proud of how numerous African countries have dealt with COVID-19, and in how African countries have dealt with the virus just disproves this idea that the West is invincible. I think for one of the first times we're seeing actually the West is not invincible. African methodologies, African ways of handling situations are really effective. Lara has already discussed South Africa, which is dealt really well. We see in Rwanda was the first country to react to COVID. So it really, really quick action. You see in Senegal, they've got the cheapest testing kits across the continent. And then where you haven't seen such good leadership when it comes to the virus is in Tanzania and Kenya. Those are different cases though, which we can get into a debate in another time. I think then just onto your second question in terms of, how has this now affected youth? And what is obviously very, very common knowledge to everyone is that with COVID and it's in the economic lockdowns that have then followed, you then have a decline in GDPs across different African continents, and I mean across different African countries. In fact, there's even been different studies that are proving that poverty rates will go up. Now, for a continent like Africa that has got such an incredibly huge youth population, last I checked, we have over 230 million young Africans between 15 to 24. That then means that as our GDP declines, as SMMEs can no longer function effectively, as the businesses are retrenching staff, it is young people at the end of the day who will be most affected by the devastating effects of COVID-19. And I think that after this pandemic, if there is an after this pandemic, the biggest challenge for all African governments and institutions will be, how do we deal with youth unemployment effectively? If they don't, we're going to see some negative effects after that.
Okay, I mean, I like the touch on how it's going to affect a lot of young people when it comes to unemployment, because we see that there's a surge, there's an increase in people getting, fired because employers cannot actually keep them because they're not in business, they're not making money and stuff. So Dr. What's your perspective on leadership and actually a touch on unemployment situations in your region?
Sure. I think for me, what has been inspiring to watch, mostly in Southern Africa, maybe even South Africa, because this is where I'm based and where I'm able to watch things closely, in Lesotho to an extent as well, is the respect and the reliance on science. I think we could have done better. We could have done better in terms of bringing more scientists into the forefront in terms of dealing with COVID-19. But looking at some of the task force that have been put together in different countries, it has been inspiring to see governments and politicians allowing scientists to work and inform decisions. But it's a hard thing to do. As you can imagine, for epidemiologists who have never worked on COVID-19 before, having to, sort of wrangle up data, put things together and make informed decisions that not only affect the future or the outcomes in terms of healthcare, but decisions that affect the economy, that affect, the future of countries in possibly years to come. And I think this is hopefully a lesson in terms of how we should do science moving forward. And I can say more about this when we talk about some of the next steps. But for me, it's been inspiring to see science and scientists and people who are working at the center of healthcare being respected and being listened to. And I think what's painful to watch is the effect on young people across different sectors. In the informal sector, people who entrepreneurs, people employed by the informal economy, but also sort of watching what is happening in the formal economy as well. So I think the painful thing about COVID-19 is just how painful it has equalized society, how it has affected people across various levels, including even university students who, for the most part, we thought are set. They have one more year to finish their university. Then all of a sudden, you need to go work from home, and you can't connect, you can't complete your exam, and all of a sudden things have changed for you. Or students who had an opportunity, a scholarship to go in and begin a program, and they can't access that opportunity anymore because of what happened with COVID-19. So it's painful to watch it. And I think even when we address it moving forward, we should look at the multi-level or the multifaceted way in which it has affected youth at different levels.
I would like to find out from Zoe. You are a model and you are a student and you're into a lot of other things. But I want to touch on the base where you are a student. I've seen the inability of a lot of our educational system to innovate. We still want students to go to school every single day, sit in the classroom and be tutored by a teacher or a lecturer. And COVID-19 has actually come to disband all those, beliefs that you have to be in a real classroom before you can actually have the best of education. How is your school coping with the change in the way of teaching students? And how is this actually also affecting your career as a model? Do you still get gigs to play, or also being affected by the unemployment scenario?
Okay, I'll talk from the perspective of being a young person in Africa and in South Africa as well. And when we talk about this issue, I think it's very important for us to talk about the fact that there were no jobs before COVID-19. There were unemployment was really high for young people, even before COVID-19. So for me, I think, okay, let me just get to how my school is dealing with this. I think higher institutions of learning in South Africa are really dealing positively and good with the pandemic. They are offering us data packages for us to be able to study at home. They're also offering us equipment. We haven't received it, but it was said that we are also going to receive laptops and things to help us study from home. And also, I will talk from my little brothers. I'm from two separate families, and one family is better off and one family is very vulnerable. So from the vulnerable family side, I've seen that their schools have literally forgotten everything when it comes to school. He hasn't been doing his schoolwork. He doesn't know what's going on in terms of school. And then when we go to my other family that is a bit well off, my other little brother is able to access everything because he has the equipment, he has the resources, he has the Wi-Fi and everything. And we also have to talk about the issue of connectivity. We have issues of network in areas that we stay in. It's a real thing. Even if the government can offer us packages, data packages, we still have issues of connecting, and having access, having proper network to do our Zooms with our teachers, or whether it's for meetings and everything. And in terms of my modeling career, I haven't been getting any gigs currently. It has really affected me. I haven't been getting gigs because we have to socially distance, of course. But as we are going to level 3, I think that will change. I am positive about that. But also when I'm talking about freelance models and everything, I just want to say that I think this is the time we need to start taking our work seriously, and we start charging for what we have to bring to the table, because most of the time we do things and we are told that this is for exposure, you're going to get exposed. But right now, with this pandemic hitting us, I think it's time for us to say, no, I don't eat off exposure. I need money. I actually need money to take care of my family and to take responsibility of myself. So that's what I think should happen right now.
Before I start maybe getting questions from other participants who would like to, share their thoughts also as well. I mean, the way we actually connected with the COVID-19 pandemic, from it's been a total new thing, and it's now that we have studied it, have people trying to understand what it is, how to even apply precautionary measures. Have you mentioned the health works like malaria drug stuff? But in this period, we've realized that our health system, it's like, it, but it's not as expectant of like a well-meaning country. One of the reasons coronavirus cases in Africa is because we are actually not doing enough tests. So we have few countries like Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria, who are doing like about 100,000 tests, but the other countries do not have enough tests to actually go down there, and also they lack health facilities. I actually did an article talking about how even our health ministers are appointed. I did a research and realized that in Africa, only 66% of our health ministers have health backgrounds, which brings like lots of questions that how are people selected to even be in leadership to provide guidance when these issues comes up. Health workers are at a huge risk, and I'm glad that for over the period of time we've been celebrating them about the kind of activities that they're doing, the kind of support that they're giving and stuff. But I want to find out from you, how do you think we should rethink our health system? Because the reason why we think that we are not getting enough cases that there might be is because our health systems are not well equipped to run enough tests for all this to happen for us to get the correct results or the enough results. So I want to find out from you, how do you think we should rethink our health system? And when it comes to leadership, appointing people to leadership positions, do you think we should appoint professionals into ministerial positions? Because, for instance, in Ghana, our health minister is an accountant. I'm not undermining his qualifications or his ability to deliver, but I believe if we have a medical doctor in that position, that person will be more equipped with new knowledge and will be able to navigate around issues to provide solutions to like daily challenges of the health system. So I want to find out from you, do you think we need to rethink our health system, or we should just continue, being in this same state that we are? I'll start with Miss Lara again.
So I believe that we need to rethink our health system in the sense that most African leaders actually don't trust the health system that they have in their countries. So, for example, Nigeria, you see the president of the country going to Western world to get health care. So that already goes to show that the healthcare provided the country which he lords over is not actually up to scratch. And COVID-19 has made us realize that we need to invest in the infrastructure we have in our country, because now, if the president is sick, for example, in Nigeria, he cannot go to the UK to get healthcare anymore because the borders are closed. So it's important to now start investing in our scientists, to invest in our doctors. Most of the doctors in most African countries, actually, they are exported out of the continent because they don't get the right pay for the jobs they do. There is not enough infrastructure to be able to do more research or to be able to expand their career. So I think we need an overall in our health system to ensure that we are able to keep our resources, which are intelligent doctors, which add so many departments outside of the continent, and also to put in infrastructures that are needed to ensure that we are able to roll out testing like you say we can, that most of the African countries can't do now. And then to also ensure that we have top-notch healthcare. And I think it's possible. I don't think we have the resources, we have the power to do it. It's just the political will to actually do it. And then goes back to the question of the political will. I think for you to get a job, especially a political appointment, it should not be based on favoritism or should not be based on nepotism. We need to start investing in proper leaders that can act, that are well equipped, experienced, and based on their educational qualification. I do agree that having somebody that's actually not from not being a doctor, heading the Ministry of Health may not mean that he doesn't know what he's doing. So far, he has the right people in his board. That have vast experience to enable us to be able to actually take our health system to the next level. And then the people surrounding them should also be well equipped.
Okay, so I want to find out from Farai, since you are in the employment services, what youth inclusive approach should we be initiating to protect employment among young people? Because as I said earlier on, we discussed earlier on, a lot of them have lost their jobs, and I mean, we don't know the next for them. So what exactly should we be doing to correct that?
Yeah, I think that's an important question that you've asked. And already we can see the impact of COVID-19 on youth on our program. So just to share some stats, YES has got over 35,000 young South Africans on the YES program who have either been through it or currently on it. We did a lockdown survey with our youth. 70% of them are now breadwinners of their families, yet they earn every month 3,500 Rand. Now, to be a breadwinner for your family on a stipend of 3,500 Rand is an enormous, enormous burden. I think what's even more sad is that 60% of our youth don't believe that they will be able to find a job after COVID-19. So these are sentiments from 35,000 young South Africans about how they perceive the future, or their own futures because of COVID-19. So I think I just want to circle back to one thing that you mentioned, which was rethinking, right? The word rethinking is important because what we need as a result of COVID-19, we needed it before, but we need it more now, is that we need governments, business, civil society, and us as youth to work together to find ways in which we can combat youth unemployment. as mentioned, with Africa's large youth population, this can only get worse. And already we had high rates of youth unemployment before, like Zoe said. Now with COVID-19, those will be exacerbated. So let me just share some different ways in which we at Yes for Youth are doing our best to have inclusive approaches to job creation during this time. The first thing is that as young people, we need to understand that e-commerce is going to be super, super important. We've got a lot more businesses now who are then converting their platforms to e-commerce platforms. And that presents a great opportunity for us as youth. We're young, we're fresh, we can acquire digital skills very, 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 very easily. We can also ensure that we can use social media effectively. So as young people, we need to be trying to get into e-commerce as much as possible. The second thing is that as young people, be afraid to work for different SMMEs. It's great if a friend of yours has established an SMME and you go and work for it, because that's where we can truly have different impacts. That's where we can gain more skills. The third is that very often we reject the idea of gig jobs. And I think we need to realize that we live in a time whereby we've got a gig economy. Things are very flexible, things are changing, things are often very temporary. So how are we then creating more and more and more gig jobs? And just to show you something that works, one way in which we've done this is that we realize as a result of COVID-19, we need to be producing masks. But how can we take the production of masks outside of areas where the rich are based and have townships producing masks, so that residents of townships have got locally produced masks? As such, we partnered with different organizations. We worked with seamstresses, youth, SMMEs to create mask productions, as we've injected 670,000 Rand into township economies during the lockdown period. We've created over 75,000 masks. Over 300 seamstresses now have their permanent jobs, and over 25 youth gig jobs. So I think this just shows that there are so many different ways in which we can adopt inclusive approaches to how we combat youth unemployment. But it's going to take collaboration between government, between your private sector, between your civil society organizations, and us as young people. And my last thing to say is that as young people, let's ensure also as another side that we are getting into healthcare. I don't think we have enough young people who are healthcare workers, and we definitely need to change that. And this relates to your point about the sort of leadership that we want to create.
Is it just me, or did we lose Prince for a second?
Yeah, I think he's frozen. Oh, there we go.
Prince, I think you're speaking, you're on mute if you are.
Yeah, so sorry. So the internet disappointed me, but I've been saying Thulile wants to share some information. But I want to find out from her technology background. What do you think are some of the innovative strategies that young people can use to actually navigate through this period of, the COVID-19? Because it's impacting some of the innovative strategies that young people can actually use to succeed within this period.
Look, I think first of all, I want to just address the issue that you brought about of vaccines and the development of vaccines, and just want to assure you that a lot of work is being done around vaccine development for COVID-19 in as I can speak with certainty within South Africa, and also to say that while people are watching, there's nothing wrong with vaccine trials. They are very orderly done. They are done, and recruitments are done in very orderly manner, and there's proper procedures in place for the testing of vaccines. And I think as Africans, we should encourage that we have vaccines and trials being run specifically in Africa, particularly because the manner in which viruses spread and the behavior and characteristic of viruses is such that they change and they adapt to the immunology of the people of that region. If we don't test vaccines in the continent, we're going to be in a situation where we have vaccines that don't work amongst our people over time. So just so that I clear that up, is that we do need to have vaccines, and these vaccines have to be trialed in Africa on African people. It's very important for us to be able to combat this, and also to get into the habits and systems of being able to respond in developing vaccines should something like that come up. So to echo Farai, we really do need to get people in the healthcare system beyond just the people at the front line, but even the people that are doing the research. You know, if there's biological warfare tomorrow, as Africans, we're not going to be able to respond because we don't have units that are working on that. And I think from a skill set, what COVID-19 has shown is that we really do need to put in a lot of effort into this. And yes, as Dr. Tsabi said, the scientists in South Africa, for example, have been incredible in responding to COVID-19, and we've been seeing them in the media space, but we can also see the general age of those people, and particularly the ones that are speaking. I know that they do invest a lot in human development, but we need to skill people. We need to skill young people in a variety of sectors. And speaking about health, it is phenomenal, and I think Dr. Tabi can echo here, and I think she'd be more better suited to speak about how we can see the effect. Data analysis, big data systems, artificial intelligence on the development of solutions in healthcare and a variety of other industries. And I think as we speak about government, and it's important we speak about government as young people, we really do have things that we don't agree with that they have been doing for a very long time. But I also think that we should begin to carry out, like Farai was saying, we should begin to support each other as young people and work within the SMME structure and support each other in these businesses, but also get invested into these technologies and see how these technologies in the ICT space and artificial intelligence can really begin to inform society. I think that this is spoken about quite a lot, but I think we need to drive the point home properly in amongst African youth, is that as we are the majority, we do need to upskill ourselves to be adequate to work in the next 10, in the next 20 years. These leaders that we're so disgruntled about, and these leaders that we're so disgruntled over, quite frankly, may not have them personally really a drive to learn these skills, because the workforce of tomorrow doesn't actually involve them, doesn't include them. They're making decisions for us, for the future that we're supposed to be working in. I think we should spend a significant amount of time in strategies to build more resilient youths for the workforce of tomorrow, and ensure at what our education system looks like, whether our education system is still relevant today. I have a feeling it's not relevant today, and it doesn't speak to the challenges that we have as young people and the challenges that are going to keep coming up in future. So really mine is that let's look at how we can create sustainable systems that will enable us to live beyond the current leadership, the current generation of leadership that we like to complain about. The time will come, and when the time comes, we need to be ready and armed, and we need to be ready and armed and acting now. If we're saying we want to innovate, if we're saying we want to be in the lead, let's do that. If we're saying we want to be the people that are going to solve vaccine issues or biological warfare tomorrow, let's be those people that are engaged in those careers, engaged in those industries, so that the challenges that we foresee as young leaders today to be prominent tomorrow, we're able to and are equipped to combat and respond to. I think I'll end there. Prince, you're on mute again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me now? Okay, great. So I think I have to let Farai go for some time. But before she goes, I want to have a final word on what do you think is the way forward for young people when it comes to the COVID-19, how they should actually go around it.
All right. Thank you so much for the question. And I'm so sorry for everyone for having to leave. It's been really, really great. And I hope to please share the details of the different panelists with me. But in terms of what the response of young people should be, I think that as young Africans, we have a unique opportunity and a unique responsibility. And I say this because we've got such a youthful population, it is called an economic burden. It's seen this way by numerous economists around the world who just say, you know, this is this continent of despair, and it will continue to be a continent of despair. And as young Africans, we have to disprove that, firstly to ourselves and to our communities, and then to the rest of the world. And how we disprove that is by doing something. And I want to echo what Thulile said, that we need to do something. When you see something in your community that you're not happy with, you need to do something about it. You need to be the one to change that. I think the fact that Zoleka is on a panel and she's so young is incredible, because she started earlier. It means she started to do something. So what can we as Africans learn from one another? It is that we need to take action. And especially now in this time post-COVID, where we know that different economies are in decline, we know that youth unemployment is going to be catapulted. What are we doing about it? Are we going onto e-commerce? Are we looking for gig jobs? Are we creating gig jobs? What is your entry point into solving the issues that your community is facing? And there are so many different resources out there that are looking at how youth in other countries are doing the work. And I'd love for all of us just to be as informed as possible in terms of doing those readings. But thank you so much for having me. And if anyone would like to reach out and contact me, you're very, very welcome.
Okay, awesome. So much, and have a great day as well. To our participants, I want to inform you that we'll be opening the floor for questions and answers, and you can start sending in your questions. I can see a participant by name, Grace Agbo. I've been reading all your comments, and I'm sure others too are doing the same. I like how you are touching on every topic that our speakers are speaking on. So I would like to speak to Zoe and find out from you. I mean, we are all in this pandemic. What do you think that as young people we should be doing, like right now? I think there are lots of young people that look up to you for the things that you are doing. And what do you think they should also be doing to go through this period?
As young people, I think right now we should be reading in order for us to adapt, reading what's happening, reading how we can adapt to the changes that are yet to come. I mean, I heard that this pandemic might be around for 2 years and it's our new normal when they put it. And I think that also, most importantly, is that we stop talking about, I can't find a job, and start thinking, how do I create a job for myself and create jobs for the people around me? Because I feel like we are not equipped as young people of Africa to come up with jobs, to come up with employment for ourselves and for the people in our communities. And I think this time, this pandemic has shown us that we need to start coming up with jobs. We need to start coming up with employment, job creation ourselves. Like Usis Thulile and Farai have already said, that we need to do something. When we see something in our community that is not working, we need to do something as young people. So I think mostly reading and also just adapting to the changes. For myself, I know I've been doing a lot of changes in how I used to work COVID-19. So right now, I know that I'm doing live sessions on Instagram, talking about different topics. Mental health is one that I think we don't really touch on, but it has really, really been a topic that needs attention during this period. And also, I think just engaging in different topics on how we can move forward from this point of view. I also liked Farai's point on encouraging young people to take up space in the medical world, and I think also in the political world, because at the end of the day, we are the future, and we need to start saying that, no, our leaders need to do this and that for us. We need to start taking action for the tomorrow that we want to see, So for me, I think it's very important for us young people to also know that we too are Africa. And that's also in my bio. You didn't read that, but yes, it's very important for us to know that we too are Africa, and we need to take action and take responsibility for the tomorrow that we want.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the bios were very long, so I actually tried to shorten them so that I can have enough time to read everybody's own. But I would like to go to Dr. Chabi. She has a point that she wants to make in regards to our discussions about technology. So Dr. Chabi, if you can please take over.
Yeah, I think this is more to the question that you asked a little bit earlier, which is around sort of what we can do next, right? And I think the way that I see it, is the voice coming from my side? No. The way that I see it is what has happened with COVID-19 is something that hasn't happened in any time in modern technology history. We have been forced to adapt new technologies at a speed that has never happened before. And that's important, and I think it's going to be central to how Africa and African youth in particular take advantage of technology moving forward, right? So if you can think of things like the mobile phone, right, as an underlying technology on which we have now seen a vast number of innovations. It took years for the smartphone to sort of proliferate across African continent, for innovation on mobile phones to even pick up. But what has happened with COVID-19 is almost overnight, like in a period of 1 to 2 months, we have all been forced into new ways of working, new ways of using tech, which were not present before. So that speed of innovation and that speed of adoption, which have never really been present before, I feel like are two underlying factors that we need to take advantage of in a serious way. And sort of three things that build upon that. The first is, the truth is a lot of youth have lost their jobs. A lot of youth have lost their opportunities in business, their livelihoods, etc. And the mistake that we will make is if we want to go back after COVID and try to approach business as usual, try to look for the same type of jobs, try to look to make money in the same way, try to make to have impact in the same way that we did. Because the reality is that the individuals with that we used to serve before, our previous customers, our previous users of the platforms we built, corporations, government, societies have all shifted in a very short period of time. And no one is going to shift back after COVID-19. The reality is all our priorities are changing. And as young people who run businesses, as young people who run non-profit organizations, and our priorities as well have to shift alongside those. So the biggest, I feel like, challenge for everybody right now, those in the formal employment sector, those in the informal economy, is to re-identify those priorities and seek out new ways of solving them. And I think the second point, which is related to that, is the fact that the very same thing, which is to say, what is the next job? The profile of jobs that we're seeing now in 2020 is very different to the profile of jobs that existed in 2010. But then again, it took 10 years for that shift to happen. But COVID-19 has forced us into a 2-month or sort of like 1 quarter a period of shift, right? So as an example, a lot of businesses, PPE is a quick example. The manufacturing of masks, the manufacturing of hygiene equipment, sanitizing equipment, etc. But that is not just one type of business that came out of COVID-19. If you look at healthcare, there are opportunities within healthcare to use technology long-term beyond COVID-19 to provide electronic healthcare solutions, to provide remote healthcare solutions, etc. If you think of, again, Farai spoke a bit about e-commerce, and I think that's the one thing that as young people should be keeping in mind is we used a lot of online buying, e-commerce during the COVID-19 period, and a lot of that won't go away completely when the virus goes away. It is going to be part of our new normal, and we have to make sure that we align with that new normal and ride on that new wave as opposed to going back to previous ways of working or previous ways of having impact or even of running business. Things like online learning, right? Students will eventually go back to school, but the truth is that, to an extent, parents will have seen that it's possible to be involved in your child's education remotely, to be involved somehow linked with teachers. Parents are looking for solutions moving forward of how to interface better with schools and with teachers, etc. We need to innovate around things like that. And as more kids keep learning online. So you see the increase of things like online abuse. That needs people who need to address it moving forward and urgently. So there's so many opportunities. The point I'm making is COVID-19 by itself, much as it has taken away a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities, it has also created many. And I feel like the biggest opportunity, the biggest challenge right now is for young people to find those opportunities. And again, like I said, they go beyond manufacturing masks. They go beyond healthcare and education. They go into things like, you know, in my area, a lot of young people have gone into being shoppers for the e-commerce platforms. That's a new type of job, to be a shopper for an e-commerce platform. There's so many little jobs, both in the informal sector and the informal sector, that we should take advantage of. I think now is the time when we have seen we can work productively virtually. So meaning now maybe is the time to think about, you know, virtual consultancies, to be thinking about, you know, running accounting firms virtually that do not need necessarily physical space and things like that. And I think the last point that I want to make along the same theme is that one lesson that we learned from war, right, is something which is true to all of humanity, which is that necessity becomes mother of invention, right? A lot of the technologies that we use today, like the internet, on which the bulk of the world economy now sits, were created as a necessary innovation for war. And what happened after war was that we then thought, you know, the innovators then thought, how do we leverage this same groundwork that was made out of necessity for war to now carry the economy, to now enable us to deliver new types of solutions? And the same thing we can look at for COVID-19. Things have changed. So many rapid innovations have had to be done at different levels in response to COVID-19 out of necessity. But what I think is critical is, as young people, we need to look at how do we then ride on that groundwork and develop solutions. As an example, right, as a data scientist, so much data has been collected in the last 3 months in the majority of the African countries, more data than we have ever seen before, right? We have seen the combination of data sets from different organizations that have never really been put together before. We are mining opinion, we are mapping out you know, livelihoods, we're mapping out logistics, and so many things that have never really existed before. And this has been done to respond to COVID-19. But interestingly, the question is, what else can we do with that? Can we use that same data, that same mapping technology? Can we use it for logistics? Can we use it for a new solution for tuberculosis? Can we use it for the track and trace approach that have been developed at a very fast pace in the last 2 months? Can they be used for something else? So I think the core of what I'm trying to say here is, you know, it's devastating what COVID-19 has done to the economy, to jobs, you know, to businesses. But what I see here is an opportunity, and I think as young people, we need to rethink. I think Farah said this before, we need to rethink who the users are, who the customers are, and re-identify what those people's priorities are, and identify these new types of business that COVID-19 has enabled us to work with.
Okay, so thank you so much for the in-depth touch on the opportunities that COVID-19 is presenting and the technology part of it. We have like a lot of comments from a lot of participants. We have William, who says, good point, we need to adapt to new changes. Others are saying, most importantly, we need to reinvent ourselves to be able to survive in the new global economy. Grace Agbo, I think she's been like our most active participant, writing a lot of theses, but I think her contributions are very, very well noted. But I think we have a question for Thulile. It's about the topic on the vaccine that you raised. Vaccine should, I mean, with your knowledge and your take on vaccine treatment of COVID-19, what's your take on the COVID organics that was, I mean, invented or brought out by Madagascar? Is this something that we should be accepting as Africans, or we should wait for the WHO to, I mean, approve something for us to be able to go ahead with it?
Okay, so that's a indigenous knowledge systems question versus, and the recognition of indigenous knowledge systems versus Western medicine, and the process that is undertaken to put vaccines out into the market and allow, or treatments into the market and allow people to start using them. And I think it's a very interesting one, because as African people, we know that we've been using herbal-based or plant-based medications for years. And we also know that they, majority of them have not been proven to or shown to have negative effects or toxic effects on people, because people continue to live because of the nature of herbal plants. The conundrum with interfacing that with the Western system of putting treatments and drugs into the into the market is that it wants proof, it wants evidence, it wants records, and the African or indigenous system carries its evidence in experience. It carries its experience and its proof and evidence in how old people will tell you about the medication and how they've seen the medication work, to the extent that a sangoma can tell you that, you know, this is what's going to happen to you, going to perspire this way. And when you interface that usually with Western science, or traditional Western science, as it were, you will find that there are parallels. There's proof. You can prove that indigenous knowledge systems work using science. The process that science undertakes, however, having had worked with an indigenous plant before, is that you find that a plant-based medication, for example, will come from different parts of a plant, and then you put it together as an extract. And when you are using Western technologies, what you want to know is how it works, is it a protein, what is its mode of action, how is it going to interface with the immune system. And as you break the plant apart, you find that the different extracts from the different places lose activity and they lose efficacy. So then you have to use the plant holistically. But Western medication or Western science, as it were, is still trying to, has adopted this, and it's adopted in indigenous knowledge very well. And there's a lot of work that is being done in indigenous knowledge systems. As both an African, as a hardcore scientist, I want to say that I am honestly torn on this one. I'm torn on this one because I know that indigenous knowledge systems work. I've seen them work. But as an empirical scientist, I do still want the graphs and I still do want the evidence. And for me, that's where the conundrum is. But I do know that indigenous knowledge systems work. If we are wanting to use indigenous knowledge systems in Africa, we have to create systems within Africa that work for Africans. If we are wanting indigenous knowledge systems to be applied in Western culture, we may need to follow Western rules. And following Western rules right now may mean that we need to adopt whatever it is they are doing to be accepted into their market. While we are producing our own systems, however, to combat that activity. But if we want the COVID-19 vaccine that is based on an African plant to go into New York and be adapted in New York, you must follow international standards until we have proof that we have a system that is African, that works, that can then be adopted by the whole world. And it's a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work.
Okay.
Can I add a little bit?
Thank you. I want to take a break because we've actually run out of time. We actually had to have our next session, which is a workshop. And I think he's been waiting for 30 minutes now, which I think we should give him time also to actually share his experience. So I'm going to end. I don't want to take like a final comment from you guys, but I think we've touched enough on a lot of things about how young people to adapt to this situation and everything. And I believe that every single person that has participated in this conversation has learned something. So I'm going to hand over the session to Nhlanhla Ndlovu. I'm not really sure that I got the name right. I'm very sure I didn't get the name right, but please pardon me. So please kindly take over the session and lead us into the workshop, and we'll be hanging on to hear from you as well.
All right, thank you, Prince. Hello, everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are.
So my name is Nhlanhla Prince, but not bad, not bad. Well done in the try. Yeah, no, it's been an interesting conversation that you guys have been having, and it's very exciting to hear, our young people being so knowledgeable on these issues. I think we do need, our own people teaching us about our own things, and eventually get to influence how we live and how we do things for us. That being said, we're going to move into our workshop for today, which is titled The Butterfly Effect. But before we do, I don't know if Prince, you are controlling the session, right? Hello, Prince. Has Prince left?
I'm controlling. Come again.
No, I just wanted to
Yes, I
get
can hear you.
some participants to
No,
participate.
I'm here.
Yeah, I would like to get people to participate. So this is not me talking and just blabbing on. But it would really be nice if people can actually
Yes,
just.
I think we have. Okay.
Yeah.
I think there are participants. We have 45 participants, so you can take over.
Awesome.
Right.
So just to start us off, I really just want to get a sense of where everyone is at, how people are feeling. Maybe I just 5 hands or something, that somebody that can just come on and share with us. It just helps to get us into the mood of the workshop. If a person is an animal, or rather if how you are feeling right now, if it was an animal, what would that be and why? Anybody can come on, maybe just five few hands can just go for it. If how you are feeling right now were an animal, what animal would describe how you're feeling right now? And why is that? And why is it that animal? Anyone? So it's Nhlanhla that's running the. Yeah. All right. Yeah, sure, please. Yeah. Why a bear? Got you. Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Let me go for it also. The way I'm feeling right now is more of a dolphin. Very, very gentle animal, yet very powerful. You find that a dolphin, although is seen to be very meager in their presence, but it's a very powerful animal too, a powerful mammal rather. It can fight a shark. It can be out there doing the things. It is agile. People love it. It is cute. You know what I'm saying? That's just how I'm feeling. Yes. Yes, please.
Yeah. I want to say I'm actually very interested in this workshop because I read up on something about the butterfly effect. So it's like a very, very nice topic. And if I would, a butterfly, is it an animal? Is it an animal? Yeah, because
We'll add it in. We'll add it in for you, Zoleka.
right? Yeah, so I would say a butterfly because I just feel like despite of everything that's happening right now, I've gotten a chance to actually spread my wings and fly as like a butterfly. I was a metamorphosis this whole time, but right now I just feel like everything is happening, but at the same time, I am flying. You know, that's why I'm saying a butterfly.
That is awesome, Zoleka. Thank you. Thank you. All right. If there's no other hands, I'm gonna go ahead then and just get straight into it. If you guys can allow me, I'm going to share a screen. And all right, that's what's happening. Okay, no, I don't think I can. Is it allowing me? I'm trying to share a screen. I'm not sure what's about how, you know, or was it Dr. Tsabi? You'll forgive me. And she was saying that in such a short space of time, the world has changed so drastically, right? And it has affected so many things. And for us as young people, we're losing jobs. Those who own businesses are falling apart. We're not able to make money anymore. So what is the butterfly effect, and how does it, you know, practically work in our lives today, looking at, you know, the situation that we're looking at as a globe, not even just as a continent, not as a country, not even as a city, but just as a globe. So we're looking at the butterfly effect. Does anyone know? Does anyone have an idea of what the butterfly effect is? Any thoughts at all? All right. Okay, I guess I just have to just keep going. Because it doesn't seem like we're getting much of interactions. All right, so the butterfly effect. If I just want to play a video that will introduce what the butterfly effect is all about, and then we're going to get into it. I was just hoping that we're going to have an interactive workshop. Like I said, this is a workshop. It's not me blabbing on, but I'll just get into it. I'll play the short video, 3 minutes. If you guys can just indulge me and watch this video, it explains it very simplistically and helps us understand, because this is a very scientific and mathematical theory, but it applies in just about everyday life. So when understood, it makes a great deal amount of sense. So I'll just play the video and shut up.
Hi, Nhlanhla. I'm not sure if you're aware. Is the
Biologists coined the butterfly explanation, or popularly known as the butterfly effect. Proven in 1963, the theory implies that in some part of the world, an action as small as a butterfly flapping its wings might create tiny changes in the atmosphere, which would eventually lead to drastic ups and downs in the environment, causing events catastrophic as a hurricane in a completely different part of the world. Had the butterfly not flapped its wings, the trajectory of the system might have been vastly different. Let us illustrate this with some existing patterns. Early October 1907, a young man takes the entrance examination to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. Of 133 initial applicants, only 28 pass. This man is not one of them. Fueled with rage, when he asked the examining board for an explanation, they said that his drawings lacked an artistic inclination. Little did they know, this man was an anti-Semite and would eventually go on to become the Chancellor of Germany, turning him into one of the major factors at beginning the Holocaust and the Second World War, Adolf Hitler. In 1962, American scientists and military experts feared what might happen in the event of a Soviet attack on the nation's telephone system. A computer scientist named J.C.R. Licklider proposed a solution to this problem, a galactic network of computers that could talk to one another. Did they know this idea would eventually be transformed and used for sharing information, entertainment, social networking, etc. by more than 2 billion people today, the World Wide Web. And if only one thing had happened differently, if the Americans were not paranoid about the Soviets, or if Hitler wasn't rejected from art school, it might have been an altered world we would be living in today. Now, how far back could you go in your life to show whose move at what time sparked a series of events that led up to you watching this video, making you what you are today? There are generations yet unborn whose very lives will be shaped and shifted by what you do today or tomorrow and the next day, because everything you do matters.
Right. So that was the short video explaining what the butterfly effect. Fichte once said in the 1800s, you could not remove a single grain of sand from its place without thereby changing something throughout all parts of the immeasurable whole. What this is all about, the butterfly effect, is simply coming to grips with the idea that small, infinitesimal acts every day, persistent and consistent, can change the trajectory of a thing. So for us, today it's COVID-19, we're on lockdown, businesses are getting shredded, people's jobs are getting lost. And so the question is, what now? What do we do for ourselves as young people? How do we change our own lives' trajectory to be able to get to where we really want to go to tomorrow? And the question is, what actions are you taking today? And this is what this workshop is all about. The butterfly effect, it's about small actions being taken, but that drastically change the effects and dramatizes an outcome later on in life. And so a proverb by Benjamin Franklin, and I thought this was really a fun one. He says, and he made it poetic. He says, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the battle was lost. And for want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horse, shoe, nail. Imagine that. An entire battle and an entire kingdom is lost simply because the horseshoe nail could not be found. It is small actions that we take today, small actions that we decide to make as part of our daily lives. So what you do in the morning when you wake up, what you do before you go to bed, what you do during the day, what you do when you get angry, what you do when you get hurt, what you do when somebody does something that you really don't like. All these small actions, they eventually pile up and create a particular outcome. Sometimes it is uncontrollable. Sometimes we can't even predict where this future is going to go, but it is going to happen. Now, because of time, I've been told I need to stop this workshop in the next 30 minutes. So there are three things I really want us to just explore and get into. And the first one, it's understanding the problem. The second one is understanding pivots, especially for those young people in business, for those of us who are involved in whether social enterprises, informal business or formal businesses, understanding the concept of pivots, and then finally to discuss and explore consistency, and if at all, it has any effect on the desired outcomes that we really are looking for. So I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna crack into this thing. So this is really what, the butterfly effect. And William, you're absolutely right. A small change can affect the large results. I did change the sound. I hope that you are hearing the video. So first of all, the first thing that I wanted us to discuss was understanding the problem. Oftentimes as young people, I'm finding, because if I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I help young entrepreneurs develop business models, to look into strategy development, and just basically make sure that they work their businesses to where they really wanted to go to. And I find that one of the biggest problems in identifying and providing a solution is young people are not willing to do the work to understand the actual problem. So one of the small acts, but then it's an act that can create an amazing result, is going in deep and understanding what the problem really is. So right now we're on lockdown and people are, from face value, the big problem is we are all on lockdown and we are losing jobs. But is that really the problem? Could there be other problems that exist around you? Could there be things that, if you were to really look around your community, if you were to look at, what is going on around the world, what other problems are there that you can really just dive into and spend some time in understanding? I think it was Albert Einstein who said that, if you spend 95% of the time in understanding the problem, you will spend only 5% of the time coming up with a solution, because you understand the problem so immensely. And this is a small act that, when done very correctly at the very beginning, at the initiation stage, you are then able to effect change on the trajectory of a project that you're undertaking. Perhaps you're starting a business, you've just lost a job, you've gotten some UIF money, or I don't know, you've raised some funds if you have, or you don't have any money at all. For you to be able to start solving the problem, you need to understand the problem very, very deeply. And this is the challenge. The challenge is, let's start as young people getting into the habit of understanding a problem much deeper than we think we understand it. We need to get into understanding a problem by first making the assumption that we don't understand it, that we don't know all the things that go around a problem, that we now need to find ways to actually understand the problem and get deep into it, so much so that we understand who the problem affects, where are they being affected, how is it affecting them, why is this even a problem? Is this a seasonal problem? Is this problem consistent? Is it something that comes up only in December? Does it come up only during COVID-19 times? Just understanding the problem very clearly, because then this helps for us to come up with brilliant solutions for a problem. We understand from what we read, and well, at least from the research that I'm doing right now, that although the lockdown is it's gonna be lifted globally. By the time we hit December 2020, most countries would have lifted their lockdowns, but the world is never going to go back to being what it was before COVID-19. So that means that we're going to be faced with a whole new different set of challenges. I think Dr. Tsabi actually alluded to this fact, that even right now, within the lockdown, there are opportunities and challenges that have been created by the current circumstances that we find ourselves in. So the question is, when you go into finding or trying to establish a new business, are you looking at it from just right now? Or are you already beginning to create a trajectory of the problem? Are you speaking to other people to help you understand what this problem really is about? Because see, the idea is, it's a small act, and it seems very infinitesimal, it seems very small, it seems insignificant at the very beginning, but it creates some of the biggest and drastic changes. And the results are amazing in the end. So the question is, are you spending time understanding the problem for the business or the opportunity that you're identifying? So that's the first thing. It's a small act. It's a butterfly effect. It's just a flipping of the wings. And hey, who knows? A typhoon might just occur elsewhere in the world. The second thing, also looking at time, was the issue of pivots. And I really think that this is an interesting topic, because pivots basically explains that you are going a particular direction, you're going east, and as you're going east, you realize that the road is no longer good for you. You then pivot and you go north, for example. right? It's not just taking an alternative route, but it's taking a completely different route from what you were doing. And this changes your entire business model. It changes your entire thinking. It changes your entire organization if you're an enterprise, a social enterprise, or an NGO. But pivoting now has never been more important than it is today. Because if you think about what COVID-19 is introducing, the challenges that it introduces, it's now that I'm running an entrepreneurship program, for example. I used to run workshops face-to-face with people. I would travel across the country and would do business model canvassing, would do strategy development, marketing strategies face-to-face. Now, I'm having to do the same thing, but I have to do it online. Now I have to train myself how to be a facilitator online. I have to train myself how to keep connections alive with human beings, but doing it in a virtual space. And this is a very challenging situation. And for us to be able to effectively provide our value proposition, or what it is that we want to provide as a solution effectively to the beneficiaries, we had to pivot. We had to change how we do things. We had to change what it is that we're doing. And we had to change the trajectory of our program. And today it is beginning to see fruits only 2 months later, because we pivoted, and we pivoted fast. And this is important. It is important that when you begin to think about pivoting, you do it very quickly. You don't spend too much time thinking about it, because, you spend too much time strategizing, you end up sitting on the strategy and not doing anything about it. So it's the small act of just simply thinking, what could you do differently, but still deliver the same value to your beneficiaries, to your customers, or to whoever that you're working with, right? And as young people, I think it was Zoleka, right? Who spoke about, we need to stop thinking about, we need to find a job. That's the old way of thinking. Yes, not everyone. According to statistics, it says that only 10% of the globe's population is naturally entrepreneurial, right? But everybody can start a business. Maybe you don't have the natural talent to see an opportunity, find a gap, and quickly fill that gap to make money. But everybody, if you look at a problem well enough, everybody can make money in some way, right? And this is the time for us as young people to not sit back and think, oh, well, it's COVID-19, we've lost jobs, what can we do? We need to start changing our strategies, we need to start changing our thinking, and it all starts with small acts done consistently over time. And this will have a drastic change in the results that you're looking for. So pivoting is important. So even pivoting your own thinking. Perhaps you were a reader of novels. I'm a big fan of reading. And if you used to read novels, maybe it's time to pivot. Start reading, autobiographies. Start reading books that actually help you start thinking through the problems that you are facing personally. If you lost a job, get a book. I'd recommend books like, Who Moved My Cheese, that speaks about the audacity of the fact that change is inevitable and change is audacious. Change comes to you without discussing or negotiating things with you. But when change comes, how do you then react? And how do you yourself begin to put yourself in a space where you can change the way your life goes after that? It's all about adaptation, right? Small acts that helps us adapt in a world of chaos. And right now, during COVID-19 times, the world is chaotic. Everything is just going haywire. Sometimes a lot of people I know of people, friends, families that don't even know where their next food is going to come from. That's just how chaotic life is right now. So pivoting is such an important thing to do, and it changes just about everything. Now, next in the discussion is, consistency. I remember it was Denzel Washington who said, consistency in between success and failure, or rather between goals and success, are consistency and discipline. Without discipline, you'll never start. and without consistency, you'll never finish. And this is important. It's such an important aspect of small acts, right? How is it that you can change your life and change your life's trajectory, the projections of your own life, the projections of your own projects, your business, whatever it is that you're doing? How do you change it? It is through small, consistent actions on a daily basis. And if you were to ask yourself, what one thing, if done right and done consistently, could change the trajectory of your life? So if you were to think about the goals that you have for yourself, for your business, for your life, for your financial security, for your family, any type of goal that you have, what simple act? I don't want to talk about drastic actions, going to the moon. No, just what simple acts? If you were to think about it, if you were to think about your own strengths, your the things that you have innately in you, or sometimes things that you need to work on for yourself, what one thing, if done well and done consistently, could change the trajectory of your life? I know for me, for my own business, for my own personal life in general, discipline is a huge thing. Growing up, I grew up, child to, the only child to my mom, two with dad, but you know how it is. And growing up, I mean, mom used to pamper I wasn't the type of kid that would complain about anything really. She didn't have much money, but there were a lot of comforts, creature comforts. I had them, and this kind of worked through my discipline. It was lacking, for lack of better word. And so, as an adult, as a young adult now, I've had to make a decision that every day I'm going to do something that shows me up towards being disciplined. Small acts. This could be waking up very early in the morning to do some work. This could be me going to gym every day, right? Since COVID-19 has closed, discipline has dwindled a little bit. So I have to now get back into the mode of self-training while I'm at home. But it's all about the small acts on a daily basis. What is it that I'm doing every day to get myself to the goal that I so wish to see my life at, right? So this is what really the butterfly effect is all about. And it's about the small actions that changes the trajectory of an entire life, right? So what are your actions? What are you going to decide for yourself? I mean, anyone that would like to share their thoughts, their feelings, because a workshop that has only one person talking kind of ceases to be a workshop and it becomes a TED talk of some sort. If anybody wants to share anything, please do feel free to share some thoughts. No one. All right. Yeah, well, I guess that's it. I mean, I did not plan to speak for 40 minutes. I had planned to just simply, have an interaction session with everyone. But I do hope that all of you who are still in this session, I do hope that you've learned something. And more than learning, I hope that there's something that you are taking back for your own life, and that, you'll start making small changes that will eventually change the trajectory of your life. And with that, thank you very much. My name is Nhlanhla Ndlovu once more. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate you all.